I'm hopeful, regardless of the outcome. Boost the positive energy without one. Sorry about the jab, I'm on a holy field. I'm bearing fruit, but demons try to eat them like Yoshi meals. I pissed them off the Batman like Falcone deals. Jungle full of predators, I know how Mowgli feels. So I got the fire, refuse to live in fear. I can spot suppliers, eating fresh rolls.
Oh yeah, welcome to the bonus episode of the Permaculture Pimpcast. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, practical living, and as always, y'all, this is always going to, my guest on today, y'all, is going to knock your boots off. But before we get into that, remember, for anybody that's live right now, I know this is more of an impromptu thing, and you didn't get a whole lot of notice. If you would, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. Tell everybody we're broadcasting live right now. This episode, as always, brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from twooldcrowshomestead.com. Turn that simp into a pimp. Bam! And remember, pimp stands for permaculture is my passion, so it's not a bad word. Remember, Heaven's Harvest, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Handle all your preparedness needs yourself. Anything you can't do, reach out to them because they can probably get you squared away. And let's not forget, if you want to listen to it, there's going to be a fair amount of people that are listening to the audio format. And if you do, go check out the Fountain app, where you can listen to all your podcasts over there. Remember, start with the Pimpcast, of course, and you can triple up the speed if you like. And if you want to drop a derivation of Bitcoin on a playa, you can do it over there on the Fountain app. So if you want to
tip a pip,
do it over there on the Fountain app. All right. Also, Redemption Shield. I got my feet, bare feet right now. If you don't believe me, anybody watching, check this out. Bam. Bare feet sitting on this grounding mat as I'm in here being bombarded by EMFs from all this electronic equipment around me. Well, the way I mitigate it and send it all to ground and get those awesome balling electrons. Sorry, a little tongue twisted today. He's using this mat. Folks, I'm not just a sponsor. Believe me, I am a customer. Take it from me, journeyman electrician, 27 years of experience, IBEW trained, and on the same token, EMP Shield, y'all, $50 off with promo code PERMA. Things jump off. You're not going to the club. You're going to the house or your bug out location. Also, your biggest threat out there is not necessarily an EMP when it comes to your house. It's lightning. And if anything gets past that EMP Shield and Kentucky fries anything in your house, bam, they're going to cover you up to 25 G's. So you don't even have to worry about reaching out to your insurance company or anybody like that. Now, before I get into my guest, y'all, I have got a huge announcement. And good night, y'all. I am as nervous as R. Kelly standing outside of a daycare right now, because what we got coming up right now, I've teamed up with Sprinkle with Soil and also the Fit Farmer. And everybody knows who they are. They got YouTube channels. They got podcasts. Well, we've asked ourselves, there are things we love about a lot of homestead festivals and things that maybe we want to change, things that we would like to do different, and I dare say even better. Folks, write it down. homesteadersunited.com, because we are going to have our first ever jamboree, and that's going to happen in August 29th through the 31st. My birthday just happens to be on the 30th, so it's going to be the best present in the world. Hopefully Michelle's going to make some of that ball and cake she knows I love. But anyway, here's why this one is different, y'all. Hold on to your hats. I am dead serious. Everything's included. When I say everything, I mean everything. For the most part, it's as close to an all-inclusive as you can possibly get. Now, breakfast and lunch, we got some ballin' food trucks out there. Ain't going to be any hot dogs, nothing like that. Gourmet food trucks. And then we're going to have chefs cook for everybody. And here's the best part. Ever since I was a kid, y'all, I never could stand the notion of a VIP. Ever since I was a kid in Oklahoma City trying to sneak into the arts festival, into the VIP section. Well, I never had the money, even though it was $5. Well, guess what? At this one, y'all, there is no VIP. You know why? Because everybody is a VIP at this. Everything's all included. No upcharging, no anything, y'all. I'm talking the processing course, which we're going to process a sheep and eat it because our chefs are going to cook it. Ducks, you're not even going to believe what's on this menu, y'all. All the other courses, whether it's beekeeping, all of it with the cost of your admission. That's why I'm so doggone excited, y'all. And then check this out. We got early bird pricing right now where it's literally $249, and that includes everything. If you want to camp out there, make sure you get your site right now because we have limited camping space and pretty much everything else is included, y'all. All of the classes. And the classes, if you add them up, because I teach a lot of butchery classes, if you add them up, y'all, the price of this thing alone would be, well, probably $1,500 if you were to pay for everything separate. Y'all, it's all included. Everybody's involved. So go out there, go to homesteadersunited.com, our first ever jamboree. I think you're going to love this website. And folks, if you can't tell, I'm as happy as a puppy with two Peters right now, not only because I've got one of my best friends that's about to be on this Pimpcast, but also because we're putting together the festival that I've always wanted to see. And the best part is it's just outside of Asheville in Fletcher, North Carolina. It's at a real life working blueberry farm that's still, and at the same time this is all going on, y'all, the Apple Festival in Hendersonville is kicking off. So everybody, you want to jump at it right now because these things are not going to be around long. We got early bird pricing for the first 50 people that get in. So with that said, hit the thumbs up one more time, y'all, and tell everybody after you get yourself signed up at homesteadersunited.com, tell everybody you know what we got going on because this is going to be the festival that everybody else envies. Mark my words. No two ways about that. All right. With that said, y'all, I look, in my permaculture journey, I've known a lot of people along the way. And one who's been at the foundational level for me is my guest that I'm going to have on right now. In fact, if you need one of his Ballin' Permaculture shirts, conversation starter, the one that people ask me, where do you get them all the time? Well, it's not only do I get a lot of my sage advice from this guy, but he's also something of a pretty awesome designer when it comes to t-shirts. And also he's really, really awesome at consultations remotely or otherwise. He will get you squared away, folks. When I was finding my way in this permaculture world, he was one of the people right out of the gates that kind of held my hand and told me what to do, what not to do, how best to do it. He's one of the most selfless people I know. He's been an enormous blessing to my family. It's because of him that William even went to Australia to learn under Jeff Lawton. He was Jeff Lawton's right-hand man for a while. And with that said, I'm going to quit yapping and go to my man, Eric. How you doing, Eric?
I'm good, man. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here, bro. You know, there's going to be a number of people in this audience that don't know the full extent of your background. I want you to take a little while. And folks, there's a reason I'm doing this, and there is a reason he's on here because we have record numbers getting into this space and people wondering where to start, how to begin. This is the guy you want to talk to, y'all, and that's why he is on here. Look, we're probably going to go in 10,000 different directions before it's all said and done. But before we do, I want you to once again hit that thumbs up. Go to homesteadersunited.com. Eric, tell everybody about you and what brought you to the work you do.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. And just a quick note on the t-shirts. I was literally in Lowe's the other day and had the Prime Directive shirt on, and an older couple, they were like, oh, I was reading your shirt and asked about permaculture. I gave them a link to the website. So you never know where these shirts will lead you.
Man, you got that right. If I had you know what? I found out I was at a homesteading festival last year. And it was crazy because I saw these two people, a husband and wife, that were wearing, actually it was at the Mountain Readiness Festival last year. And then I saw some there was another couple that you had apparently done remote consultations for. They were absolutely blown away and dumbfounded by what you were able to provide. And they were wearing your shirt. So, I mean, it was a conversation starter right off the bat because I know there was nobody else they got it from. And of course, I'm wearing your shirt at this festival. Might have been this nitrogen fixer I have on right now. And so it was like, oh, you know, Eric, I'm like, yeah, oh, you're Billy. We heard him on your podcast. So folks, if you don't know, the favorite part of my podcast every single time I do it is when Eric gives his tip of the day. Folks, wise man, tons of experience, and he's going to be dropping it like it's hot today. So Eric, let's get into you and your background, bro.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up in New England and didn't really appreciate that we had gardens and fruit trees when I was so little. And by the time I got interested in it myself, we had downscaled to a smaller property and then eventually a condo. So there was no land in my family to actually practice on, which was frustrating, but it led me to seek out that experience around the world. And before I got into permaculture, I studied wilderness survival with Tom Brown Jr. at the Tracker School. And that definitely set me on a path of not letting fear dictate my decisions. Not that I'm any kind of expert survivalist or anything. I'm competent at best, but it's just the knowledge that there's another way to exist on the planet and you don't have to let fear run your life. So that was amazing. And then I discovered permaculture. Oddly enough, living in Los Angeles, designing toy packaging is when I discovered permaculture. And it couldn't have been at the more appropriate time because I was actually up for a promotion. And instead I quit and drove up north to Northern California and took a permaculture design course that was being taught by Jeff Lawton. And there was another life-changing moment because I just clicked with Jeff's style. And he mentioned that they did an internship program. And so as soon as I could, I sold everything that was of value and headed to Australia, which was only planned to be there for 3 months. And then it led to 6 months. And with trips around Australia, trips around the world, at one point, we were in the mountains of northern Vietnam on an aid project and then had to make an unplanned stop to Hong Kong to go in a meeting in a boardroom about a sustainable chicken operation. So Jeff had to buy a suit in Vietnam because we didn't have any what we call smart clothes with us. And yeah, so that was basically my introduction to permaculture. And it's just gotten pretty much crazy since then. I managed the Jordan project in Greening the Desert 2, which was another amazing learning experience, and just the appreciation I have for water and just getting anything to grow, like not being privileged in species selection, because there's a lot of places in the world that it's not even possible to get what would be considered a native to grow. So you need to just use whatever is available. And on that note, I agree with David Holmgren, and he calls that we're in a global ecology. So whatever we need to use to fix the damage as fast as possible, I'm all for it. And I just look at it as a management issue. If you don't have the right management system in place for a particular species, then you wouldn't select that species. So nature's not privileged with species. It's mostly people that get sentimental or decide what things shouldn't or shouldn't be there. So if you read the book, The New Wild by, oh shoot, I forgot the author actually, but my bad. That's an amazing journey through the reality of invasive species, and the damage is almost always caused by humans, and the nature just comes in to fill a void. And just like medicine, we treat the symptoms, not the root cause. So, but back to Jordan, and then followed that up with a stint in New York City. I was in and out of New York City for about 10 years. And at the time, I didn't realize that it was actually setting me up for the ability to communicate with almost anyone. So at the time, I probably resented it, but now that I look back at it, I'm really grateful that I had those opportunities. Being a bartender in New York City, you basically have to learn how to talk to anybody. So that's worked out really well now for the aid projects I've been on, or just people interested in permaculture, just from all demographics, all political ideologies. Everybody can connect over food. So, and then also, like you talk about often, you can learn things from people you might not agree with. You don't need to only listen to people who agree with everything you say, because you're going to be in a small echo chamber, and what a boring world it would be if we all thought exactly the same anyway.
How were you able to when you find yourself on these aid projects, these permaculture aid projects in countries where you don't necessarily speak the language, how on earth? I mean, I okay, so you're in Jordan and you're at one of the most inhospitable places on the planet. And you're in here dealing and working with people. You've been in Vanuatu, you've been in all throughout this globe doing projects and stuff. How are you able to direct these folks and communicate? Because I mean, that had to be a uphill battle. And I want to also juxtapose that with communicating with the people in America regarding these projects, and which one might be easier, even though I suspect that might be a rhetorical question. But how, in terms of communication and getting these people to follow your lead, how are you able to do it?
Well, fortunately, most people in other countries speak more languages than Americans typically do. So I often would have someone who spoke English and the local language, and then a lot of it just there's a lot of nonverbal, I guess, communication you can get to, and just, of course, demonstrating a technique is far more valuable than explaining it anyway. So just working side by side is the best way to teach anyone how to do something. But yeah, back to your point about, you would think Jordan is the most difficult merely because they get so little rain and there's almost no soil left. But every project has its own difficulties. For instance, in Vanuatu, I mean, they had a half a meter of topsoil, so it was no issue growing things. But they needed a design system to create fertility in one place, because they would walk 15 minutes minimum into the middle of the jungle, hack out a plot and grow their vegetables. And then they would just, when the fertility was used up, they would move and do it again. But the problem is they were running out of space, and as the population grew. So the whole challenge there was actually culturally getting them to accept a design system where, one, they needed fences because they keep the animals in the village. So you can't have a garden if you don't have a fence. So just getting a really cheap quality chicken wire fence around the garden was one of the biggest accomplishments while I was there, which sounds ridiculous, but it took like 3 weeks. We had to go, a whole day was spent just going and chopping down Lucina posts to make fence posts out of, and then just scrapping together as much chicken wire as we could. So, I mean, it's an island nation, and the island we were on was on Tana Island, which was, so everything would come into the capital city and then get shipped again to the outer island. So you're paying double shipping on everything you would do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So communicating with those folks, I was going to ask something that would probably be offensive to some folks out there. Which were you able, because you've done projects, whether it's in the States or around the globe or whatever, where do you think it was easier to get the people on board by and large, overseas or here, or was there a difference?
I mean, definitely the places where their only food is if they grow it themselves. It's obviously a lot easier than, I'd say the biggest challenge in America and most of the Western world is people are just, their urgency or the desire to grow their own food is not strong enough as long as they have a grocery store to go to either. So, I mean, you really have to want to do it for yourself, because economically it doesn't make a lot of sense often until you're, more established. Like, the setup costs can be expensive depending on your situation. And so that's a lot of groceries from Costco you can buy to set up even a couple raised beds. So it really has to be either the urgency you see that you're going to need your own food for security reasons, or you want to do it just for your own independence or health. So unfortunately, it's not sad to say, it's not dire enough, despite what we think, to make people change in droves.
I don't know. I'm starting to see it now, where it looks as if, I mean, Joel Salatin, his latest book was Homestead Tsunami, and we have record numbers getting into this space. I mean, people that ordinarily would never, ever, ever have considered it, but they see the inflation in the stores, and now it's driving people, at least the really smart ones, into this movement. And folks, this is where we're going to get down to brass tacks in this. We have, record numbers getting into this space, and right out of the gates, they're what I've seen and what people write to me about. And one of the biggest problems is they're like, okay, I see this whole thing appears to be falling apart. I'm going to get into this, which I think fear is one of the worst reasons to get into it. But let's say you found yourself here. They go out, they buy a ton of animals, and now they make whatever land they were on a barren landscape, and then they're, calling up somebody like you. So for these people that are coming right out of the gates, Eric, because you've been at this a long, long time, what are some of the do's and don'ts for the people that have realized they've had this eureka moment and said, look, things are tough. I've got to get my poop in a group, got to get this stuff off and running. What are maybe some of the biggest mistakes you see coming right out of the gates for a lot of people? And maybe you can offer some little advice for the ones that are just considering this lifestyle.
Yeah, well, I would just quote Bill Mollison: start outside your door, get a success, and continue. As if you go too big, too fast, you make too many mistakes you can't recover from, either financially or mentally. And yeah, getting animals before you're ready is probably one of the biggest ones. The people romanticize the kind of homestead and permaculture lifestyle, and social media can do a great job of inspiring people, but it never tells you the real story, and it's always more work than you think. And I think it's probably disingenuous to promote it as, no work system, because everybody's idea of what work is different. And if it's not a lifestyle you truly want to live, if you want to just go to your job or, watch TV, go to the ball game and do a couple hours here and there, that system is going to be completely different than if you want to provide most of your own food. So, and I also would say, back to your point, a lot of people are getting into it, but they don't truly understand what it takes to be a minimum sustainable. I think we both agree that chicken tractor on steroids is the most amazing compost producing system there is. But even doing that little work of one pile a week is, people like, oh, that's too much, Yeah. So it's that the realization of what it truly takes to produce your own fertility, I think, is probably the biggest lesson people need to understand when they get into it. Because you can switch into homesteading, you want to grow your own food, but if you're still buying the products from the industrial agriculture world, that's not sustainable. That's not going to change anything, No, it's not. Even regenerative agriculture, if it's at a scale, it's not, there's all the other supporting industries. Yes, you might be taking care of the soil on that farm, but there's the whole wider industrial infrastructure that supports transportation, materials, people care, all that stuff that might be falling away.
Well, a lot of the other thing that I'm seeing too is that a lot of homesteaders, they get out here with the best of intentions. They get on this property and they may have purchased it, and they go out here and you don't understand. You go out there and go get the cows, the sheep, the chickens, the pigs, and then you turn what could have been a good landscape into something that is desolate. That is what we see more than anything, at least on my end, where the folks are jumping out of the gate. They're doing too much too soon, and it's more than the land can even recover from. And they're winding up in a bad place. So I agree with you, man. I think that's the best way of putting it, is quoting Bill Mollison: start right outside your door, maybe even start within your house, depending on where you live. Start outside your door and then go further along. Now, Eric, there's another little thing you've kicked off, and I'm hoping we can kind of drift into it. One of the other things that a lot of people are doing right now is that they're realizing they by themselves wisely can't provide all of their own needs. So they're forwarding up, maybe foolishly or smartly, depending on how they're going about it, with other families, other groups. They're creating mutual assistance groups and stuff like that, which to me is by far and away the best way to go about this. But you got a little project going on out where you are. And why don't you talk everybody up? I want you to talk to everybody about it, because on the heels of this festival that we're going to have at Homesteaders United, or the Homesteaders United Jamboree that's coming up. Folks, the biggest thing right now is people meeting other people who are interested in this very thing, and finding a way to maybe pull your resources on certain things, or finding other ways in which to go about it. Eric, you got a project that you kicked off all by your lonesome, as I understand it. And why don't you tell everybody about it? Because people are wondering, I can't do it all by myself. So why don't you tell everybody what your latest thing is?
Yeah, so the latest is a nonprofit permaculture community group, and it's based on one Jeff Lawton started in Australia over 30 years ago, and he reckons that's the most secure area in all of Australia. 30 years of people coming together once a month over permaculture and spreading plants and abundance and education all through the area. So I started it with a friend of mine here in the Sacramento area in Fair Oaks, which is, if you've never been to Sacramento, it's a very kind of unique place as far as what you consider a suburb goes. So the main structure is, it's a nonprofit, kind of like an amateur sports team or something like the Elks Lodge, similar to that. And we meet once a month, and the focus is permaculture education and demonstration. And the idea is just to gather people together, talk about growing food, pool our resources. It's basically straight out of chapter 14 in the designer's manual, setting up an alternative global nation. And in the designer's manual, it's more focused on this is kind of the precursor to the bioregional organization, where you select your bioregion based on, either natural boundaries or city boundaries, and you start cataloging all your resources, what your problems are, all the different ways you can solve those problems. So this is kind of a precursor to that. So it's very small, and it's based on the smallest government area. So like city or town typically is basically what has a official classification as a voting block. Or in Fair Oaks, technically it's not an incorporated city, but it is a census designated area, and it definitely has its own unique identity. So, and in America, there's over 19,000 local government areas. So, and the naming scheme is intentional, as well as the structure. So Permaculture Fair Oaks is the name of our group, or Fair Oaks Permaculture would be another idea. And the way we do it that way is, so we are part of the community, and the community is part of us. So it's like we identify as part of Fair Oaks, and permaculture's in the name because permaculture is the lens through which we go about what we're trying to do. So a couple of the projects that we are excited about is a 12-month recipe book. So Bill Mollison said the first thing you should mulch is all your recipe books, because inevitably they're going to send you to the store for something out of climate or out of season. So we catalog what's growing in the area every month of the year, and then you create recipes based on that. And obviously, you can still have your kind of pantry staples, salt, pepper, sugar, and things, but largely the majority of the ingredients in the recipes should be from the area and from that month. So you're intimately...
Let me stop you just for a moment there. That is absolutely positively brilliant. I mean, it especially whenever I hear anything, man, there's always that part of my mind as a former soldier where I'm always thinking about the preparedness quotient of everything. That is a book that should be written, Eric. I mean, that is absolutely brilliant. It really is, because even if you found yourself in the spot where, like you said, you break out the cookbook, and just like Mollison said, it's going to give you all the stuff that you don't probably have on hand. But if you had one that was to start there is absolutely brilliant because it makes everybody kind of pull their ideas, resources, and what's available, just as people would have done 100 years ago, maybe a little bit more than 100 years ago. There wouldn't have been, hey, I'm going to go down to the Piggly Wiggly and go get, tomatoes out of season. It ain't going to happen. So I think, I didn't mean to stop you there, but man, that's such a brilliant idea. I had to weigh in on that. That is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm most excited about, just because it forces you to intimately interact with seasonal options. And obviously different parts of the world are going to have less options in winters. So it kind of really makes, can you eat seasonally? Like, does that mean if you were forced to eat only what grows in your area at that time, would you move, And also it brings home the idea of what these quote unquote more ecological or equitable diets, but if it's all coming from halfway around the globe and at times that you can't grow, like, is that really the most sustainable diet if you can't grow it or eat it, produce it where you live?
Bro, that is absolutely genius. Every preparedness group I know of, I'm going to tell them about this. As simple a concept as that is, it is just striking how profound it really is, because I mean, good night, man. I mean, you're talking about getting back to the soil. It could also help you direct if you're going to put in a garden, you're like, okay, now what should I put in? Okay, how am I going to go about this? At what season is it going to be coming up? I mean, man, that is just absolutely brilliant. So is that like the corner piece of this group that you've established with your friend, is starting with this recipe book?
I mean, it's definitely one of the key projects. So there could be any number of projects. It's all based on what the community wants to be involved in. Like, another one we're excited about is creating a public food forest, but mostly it's just a big part would just be cataloging your resources, like what skills and materials you have in surplus, and just also eventually creating a local economy, and then just working with each other and trying to solve all your problems, and being the change you want to see, instead of holding out hope for some white knight to come in and solve all your problems, which isn't going to happen. And they're not going to know the right thing to do anyway, because they're not from your community.
So let me ask you this, because I know a lot. When I went to the last festival, that was, I think it was in Mountain Readiness. Yeah. A lot of these discussions coming on, like, I don't know anybody near me. I don't know how to get people together. Let's start back a little bit. And what did that look like first, formulating the idea, and how were you able to make people in that community aware of what it is you were trying to do?
I mean, mostly just, so my friend, Matt, who I started it with, he's local. He's grew up in the area. So he already so basically taking advantage of his network of friends and connections, and then just the few people I've known for the few years I've been here, and then just getting the word out on social media. And yeah, I mean, the connections that have been coming in are just like been groundbreaking, and everybody's been really excited. And it's just basically something that as Bill and Jeff both say, the most critical skill set or attribute to have to make anything successful is perseverance. So just the consistency and showing up and setting a stage for people to come, because you can see it when the last couple meetings we started what we call an abundance swap. Basically, it's just plant swap, or whatever you have in surplus you bring to the meeting. It could be oranges, it could be seeds, plants, cuttings, whatever. And so everybody lays it on the table, and you just take whatever you want to bring home. And wow. I mean, the first couple meetings, people were leaving with like a food forest starter kit. So, and we did like basically an adult show and tell. So everyone would talk about what they brought in and why they brought it in. So you get the education as key components. You'd learn about a new plant or a new fruit or something. And the energy was just off the charts. You could see how excited people were. One, just to talk with other people that share their passions is obviously the first one. And then just learning something and just feeling like you're not alienated. Like, oh my God, you're excited about weird fruit trees. So am I.
Wow. Talk to me about how long have you been doing this at this point? And is it taking root? Are the numbers growing? Where are you on this?
Yeah, we started, our first meeting was in March. And so we've had 3 meetings so far, and we do it the 4th Wednesday of the month. So it's just a consistent thing. And we started, fortunately, there's a public library offers a free meeting room. So we started there, and then we just made some amazing connections with another gentleman that's big in community development, and he fell in love with Fair Oaks as well. And so we basically just got together at the perfect time. And so the synergies are kind of just crazy what's been happening. So he wanted to basically create a model to like rebuild villages and towns, and he knew about permaculture, and so we got together. And then he's got a new meeting space that's literally right in the center of town, and he said, yeah, come, use our meeting space, because as great as the library is, they have restrictions on what you can and can't do, because everything's got to be free. So you can't sell things, you can't accept donations and things like that, which is a little inconvenient. So now we're basically going to build all the ideas we have for the permaculture community group meshed perfectly with what he wanted to do with this village, and just building the local economy. Like, okay, instead of saying, oh, the greatest pizza place is 3 towns over, it's like, okay, well, let's create a pizza place here. And just thinking about what are the gaps in what you want to see in your town, and then creating it, which is part of the economy and like the kind of business incubator program of, okay, do you want to have this job you don't really like, or do you want to follow your passion? And like, how can we use your passion to create a business we all want to support? And the fact that if you have a customer base already, then it's much easier to start a business. So that's a big part of it, is, not looking for handouts, not, as Mark Shepard calls it, a professional begging organization. We want to create our own revenue and create our own resources. So there's a yearly membership fee to be part of the group. And it's open to the public, so you don't have to be a member to come, but there's a few benefits to being a member, but mostly it's just to support the group. And the way we looked at it is, if you get like 30 to 50 paying members for the year, that's more or less enough to keep the lights on. So like all the basic admin fees in different states, it's going to be more expensive, but so just filings, being current with the state, any fee like insurance or like marketing stuff, all that can be covered by your base members. And then if you want to do an actual specific project, we would like fundraise for that project. So say the recipe book, we do like a funding campaign just for the recipe book, and then obviously we sell the book so we can like pay for itself and anything else. So that way, because the problem with a lot of nonprofits is you just become a full-time fundraiser, and that's all your energy goes to, especially, so there's no employees, nobody's getting paid, everything's volunteer based. So and you really have to want to be involved to, do it, which I think is the best way. And that'll show you, like, if you can't get enough members that are paying to keep the lights on, then, that maybe it's not the best area to start that group. Maybe you need to move to a more populated city. And the other way is, once you get 100 to 150 people showing up regularly, then you see, okay, where are the most people from the next town? And then, so it births the next group. And that's kind of how it spreads out fractally.
Man, I absolutely positively love this. And this is also speaking to a lot of you folks that reach out to me saying, hey, I live in a city or the suburb and I can't do what you're doing. Well, first of all, you need to go check out Eric's YouTube channel, because he had a pond on a balcony, for crying out loud. It can be done. And these mutual assistance groups, or whatever you choose to call them, are a really, really awesome way to find other like-minded people that, at least where, like Eric said, okay, so let's say I have an abundance of potatoes. Okay, well, guess what? This lady down the road, maybe she wants some potatoes in exchange for a couple of nitrogen-fixing shrubs that I don't currently have. There's just so many options. And, As of late, David Holmgren has really talked a lot about this. I mean, I think understanding the structures of our cities, he's really talked about this, and it seems like you're really kicking this thing off. Now, Eric, let me talk about the next, because I think it's brilliant how you started. Okay, first it's like a show and tell, then you got a cookbook. Where is the progression going to lead as you go along? Clearly, there's got to be another step in this.
Well, I mean, the basic goal is just to make your community as resilient and food secure as possible, with as much abundance as is publicly available. Like, I don't think no one should go hungry because they can't afford food. Like, there's no reason we can't have as much public available free food in and around our cities as possible. And there obviously needs to be a management plan in place. If you're going to create a public food forest, then, like you always talk about, people complaining, who's going to pick all this fruit? So, that has to be in there, because one of the big things we talk about is lessening the burden of government. So we want to solve our own problems. And I think it's time everyone takes personal responsibility and saying, okay, we live here. What do we want to see happen? And that way every community is unique, and it's not this homogenized, bland culture that, you go to a small town anymore. You're seeing the same stuff from any other small town. It's like, what's the point of traveling? So, like a local food co-op is one thing we've just been talking about, where you sell as much stuff from the community as possible, and also where there's only stuff that there's only available in that store, So if you want something gets really popular, like, okay, well, you have to come to this town to get it. You can't, the kind of boring business model of just global domination, I think, is not, this kind of the antithesis of that. Like, how can we really make thriving local economies? And like Bill says, find out how little you really need to earn, and then figure out how to earn that money, not trying to just earn as much as possible based on your current uses.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Especially if you want to make that transition. If you're going after the American dream, folks, I can tell you that for me, it was a nightmare until I started following what I think is my passion, what I know is my passion, which is permaculture. And and we're able in so many different ways to benefit. Honestly, Eric, when I look back at it, I'm doing far more for the planet and the people around me, working in my interest in permaculture, than I was ever able to do working as a journeyman electrician. So, folks, it is possible. You're just going to have to get off your butt, and you got to put in some work. You got to raise up and do what's right. Let me ask you, as far as putting these groups together, is there, like, in the environment you're in, I don't even know how to really frame this question, but I got to ask, is there anybody in this community that is able to produce meat, or is it primarily a vegetable kind of thing? How's that working out?
Well, there's chickens everywhere. So it's funny enough, there's Fair Oaks has a chicken on their village sign, or rooster. And technically you can't have roosters in the village. We talked about that before, how silly that is, but
you're gonna have loud Harley Davidsons rolling up the road, right?
But there's just wild chickens walking around all the time, so no one could possibly know that it's your rooster. You could say, oh no, I don't, the rooster just showed up, it's not my rooster, so you could easily get away with it. But it's there. That's why one of the things that was just so perfect about starting it here is they have like a chicken festival, they have like a chicken run, so they already understand how amazing the chicken can be for sustainability. And you don't have to eat the chickens, but I mean, not using eggs as a source of protein just seems silly to me. And the fact that they make the most amazing compost I've ever seen, that we both attested to from studying it under the microscope. So I think you're not going to get large animals in a village, and I don't think you should try to, but you could definitely have dwarf dairy goats, you could have other rabbits if you wanted to eat meat. But it's not just in the town center itself, but the perimeter area. Like we need to, if we want to get rid of industrial agriculture, which I think we have to, because it's just so destructive in so many ways, and we have to bring all the food production back to where we live, and then all those polluting farms can just be returned to wilderness. But I mean, we have to want to do it, and it's not fair to expect everyone to just grow be full-time gardeners or farmers, but there's so many people who want purposeful work, and there's people with land. And so part of the community group and just connecting with people is finding out, okay, who's got land, who wants to work. Okay, you can set up gardens, you can farm on people's land. And there's a huge generation of people who are retiring and have all this capital and all this land, and there's all these kids who have no idea what they're going to do for work. So it's just about making those connections, which is the key to permaculture.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to go to a couple of questions here. It's more of a statement, but maybe you want to respond to it. Anyone I talk to in my area, this is from Lydia, anyone I want to talk to in my area is completely in the dark about any trouble in the world. I don't know how to find like-minded people. Why don't you tell her how would you go about it?
Well, for me, because, excuse me, I would say start focusing on the people you want to meet. Because I love Joe Dispenza, and he talks all about you attract what you focus on. So that would be my first step, is stop thinking about the people that don't agree with you and just start focusing on the people you want to meet, and then opportunities will start showing up. And then just look online to see if there's any gardening meetups. I mean, I think everybody can connect over food, like growing food, like no matter what your political ideologies, demographics, no matter what your view of the world, we can all connect over food. And I think that's what we have to do, because in my mind, that's where culture comes from, is from local food. All the traditional ceremonies of indigenous people were largely all based on food. And I think that's, if it seems like there's no culture in America, it's because we're not connected to our food anymore.
Man, I can't.
Just hold your hand up, start a meeting, put up some signs in the local grocery store. Like, if you want to connect with people, you want to start something, hold your hand up to do it. And you'd be amazed, as like Jeff says, you're doing the right thing if resources start gathering around you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's truly amazing, to the point where, like, you were talking about the chicken tractor on steroids, and like what Jeff said, resources gathering around you. When I start talking about the chicken tractor on steroids, man, I literally, one of the things I do is once a week, I got to go to town anyway. So if I'm there, I'm going to stop by the bakery or the places I work with. I'm going to pick up all their food. And by the way, folks, this is stuff you could eat, and it's organic. It's just indigenous to the place where I live. Now, they could go ahead and put that in the dumpster, but now they're telling me, oh, hey, do you know this business down the street? They don't want to put their stuff in the dumpster either. So I'm now a blessing to, let's say, this Asian grocery store that I shop at all the time. I'm a blessing to these people because they no longer have to pay twice a week to have their dumpster emptied. Those resources come to me, to the point where I am turning people away. I could not manage it all. And in fact, I could, if I wanted to, I could even make a side business of maybe either giving or selling some of this stuff to other farmers that want to feed their trees, whatever. But Eric, back to you and the area you're in, because you're doing the chicken tractor. And folks, if you haven't seen it, for the folks that have reached out to me and said, oh, I don't have the space for the chicken tractor on steroids, well, go look at Eric's videos and what he's done and what he's doing with it. Folks, in one system alone, even in an urban setting or you name it, you don't need much space at all, because I want you to kind of touch on that a little bit, Eric. For the people that live in the city or a suburb or whatever the case, look, folks, in that system, you could extract the meat from it from time to time in the form of chicken. You could extract the eggs from it every single day. You could extract the compost from it and still use it as something, as a organic garbage disposal for all the things that may be coming out of your community, whether it's the shop down the road or even your house. Folks, there is no shortage of the number of solutions out there. So, Eric, let's kind of lean into that a little bit for the people that are living in these city environments and they're thinking, well, I can't make that chicken tractor on steroids happen. Why don't you tell everybody how you did it?
Yeah, so my system is I just bought one of those somewhat inexpensive chicken pens online. It's like more or less 10 feet by 20 feet, so 200 square feet, and I have 11 chickens, which is probably a lot more than some people would be able to get away with. But one of the advantages of living in a largely immigrant neighborhood is nobody complains about anything. So there's pros and cons to everything. But even 3 chickens, 6 chickens, 11 chickens, like you can make it work with anything. It's just the less chickens you have, you're going to probably need to supplement the nitrogen from either green plants, or you can start collecting your urine, which is a huge source of nitrogen. And you might have to do a little more work breaking down the compost piles. But yeah, so Jeff's got a great video that goes through the 3 kind of scales that he sees appropriate for it. So the urban system, which is, he does 16 square meters, which is like 170 square feet. And then there's a 30 bird system that can supply a half acre, and a 50 to 60 bird system that can supply all the fertility for a whole acre. But back to the urban system is, so you have 2 compost piles going at once. One's in a cage and one's open, so the birds always have access to the compost, and then the one in the cage gets to process for the week, and then you just swap them, and like 6 to 8 weeks later you have 2 cubic yards of just like the most amazing compost ever. And the benefits,
in fact, that we looked at it under the microscope and tested it, and y'all, the soil life, I don't know that I've ever really talked about that beyond the podcast, but using that system, sorry to jump in, Eric, but I got to go for it. Eric sent a Ziploc full of the soil that he got out of here. Some of it wasn't necessarily, he didn't think it was the best. We looked at it under the microscope, y'all, and this stuff was absolutely biocomplete through a Dr. Elaine Ingham standards. And it wasn't just biocomplete. It didn't just meet the minimum standards, y'all. This stuff was off the charts, and you did it through that system. So back to you, bro.
Yeah, and we've talked before about how people have a hard time even meeting the minimums of a laying system. And I told you, I was like, I don't know what this is going to be. This is honestly the laziest compost I've ever made. And I think a big part of it is just it's been building over time, because this obviously wasn't the very first compost I made with the chickens, but I've been harvesting all the weeds on site, and then going off site and harvesting weeds on my bicycle and bringing them back. And the last one I did, like, honestly, I'm kind of shocked. I don't even know what's going on anymore because there's just so much activity from a biological standpoint. I'm always concerned because the standard recipe for compost is 1/3 large animal manure, 1/3 carbon, and 1/3 green weeds or food scraps. So I'm always concerned I don't have enough nitrogen. So the last one I did probably about 50% straw or dry or carbon, and 50% green weeds, and then the 11 chicken manure. I had 2 full cubic meters of material at the start, and which is a little over a cubic yard each, and it reduced down so fast. Like it didn't even get that hot. It's not like it was 170 degrees and just cooking and burning off. Like, there was so much activity, it reduced all the way down to 1/4 of a cubic yard from 2 full. Yeah, like, I still don't understand what happened. So this time I said, okay, well, clearly I have plenty of nitrogen, so I don't need to. So this one I just ended up buying 2 straw bales from the farm store, because it's one thing I figured out. It's a lot of work going out and harvesting 2 cubic yards of material with just a bicycle and like a rice knife and stuff. So it becomes a full-time job. So I'm like, okay, I'm a bit busier and let me just go with more heavy on the carbon. So I used a full straw bale for each compost, plus the chicken manure that's been building up over 6 to 8 weeks, and a few bits of fresh green weeds for the for the biology and the enzymes mostly, and then I kicked it off with a bucket of compost extract from the previous pile, and in 2 days it was already up to 140 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, and like the chickens were, so I had the one pile that was open and the one in the cage, and the one in the cage it's still reading 140 degrees. Like I was like, I honestly I don't know what's going on. It's amazing, but it's kind of just crazy. And then I started, so the chickens started breaking down that open pile and got to the core, and I started smelling. I'm like, what is this smell? I'm like, what is, and it didn't even occur to me that it would be my pile that fast, because it was literally less than a week. And I was like, then I finally realized it's the compost, that kind of like half rotten, half compost smell. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like I was convinced there would have been not enough nitrogen in this thing. I'm like, I just want to see what happens. But so yeah, the cumulative or compounding interest on what's going on in the system is just kind of mind blowing.
Man, that's what I'm talking about, bro. You are definitely, I'm so glad you decided to do that on that level where you are, because so many people can now go over there. And folks, you want to go check out his YouTube channel. You want to go check out his website. All these shirts, if you're late coming into this conversation, the shirt I'm wearing, the shirt he's wearing, you get them at his website. I don't even produce shirts anymore, y'all. I wear his because they're conversation starters and they are beautifully, awesomely designed. Permaculture consultations, you name it. Eric, tell everybody where to find you.
Yeah, ericseider.com for the website, or at Eric Seider on YouTube and Instagram. And I need to just apologize to everyone that my videos have been so lacking lately, but all focus has been on creating the nonprofit community group. So I'm really hoping to get back into just doing a basic garden tour to show what's been going on. But one other point about the chicken tractor on steroids is, so I'm on my 3rd year of my garden, and when I kicked it off originally, I brought in some compost from a pretty good, seemed like good quality. I wish I would have thought to test it at the time, but so I had maybe 4 cubic yards of compost in let's say under 1,000 square feet of garden area the first year, and I haven't, other than some weeds and some straw to make the compost with, all the fertility's been from my own, the chicken tractor on steroids. And some of the plants that grow, and just like crazy how big. I had like a Swiss chard, like the leaves bigger than my head. And so it's definitely, and all my garden beds now are worm farms. Like every time I put the compost down, I come back and dig in there. It's just loaded with earthworms and compost worms. So it's definitely more fertility than I really need. So that's how you have nonstop production, is, the engine of fertility that is the chicken tractor on steroids.
Man, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, sorry to cut across you, but I've been basically have a plant nursery to, grow plants to sell, to raise money for the community group. So not only have I been using all the compost for my garden, I've also been making my own potting soil, which is, a great way. If you have a plant nursery out there and you're not using the chicken tractor on steroids to produce your potting mix, you're missing a huge cost savings and fertility benefit, on top of which you just get eggs and chickens as a byproduct of amazing compost. Like,
that's why I don't understand. When I first started doing these videos, when I kind of cracked the nut where I was in Texas and I started doing videos about it, I thought for sure everybody on this planet would start doing it. And, maybe one of the positive consequences of this high inflationary time that we're in is that people are going to actually go out there, put foot to butt, and then realize the best. Jeff Lawton basically came up with the best system to produce everything you need, whether it's the protein in the form of eggs and even meat that you're able to extract from the system. And then also, it's also the wonderful, beautiful idea of not having to put any good food in a dumpster when you got something that is easy to manage. It's not going to take your head off. It's just chickens. And what they do is absolutely phenomenal. All right, Eric, we got to get bouncing here in a minute. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah. Instagram and YouTube at Eric Seider, or on the web, ericseider.com.
All right, y'all. I want to thank everybody in the chat. And remember, we got that event coming up, homesteadersunited.com. Believe me, it is going to be the festival that everybody's going to be talking about, because I haven't even told you a fraction of what's going to happen there. But everything is all included with the price. And I want to thank everybody for checking us out, taking time out of your day. Go check out Eric. You're going to be glad you did. Want to thank everybody. And until next time, stay alert, stay alive.
They don't want the individual, just a carbon copy. True spitting that manicotti, yeah, I'm talking saucy. All they want to build is a prison world full of pet Tamagotchis. The kamikaze got me out of body like I'm Goku SS3. They want to push me to the center like a cell. They want to spin up at the center of the nexus. Me. They want me to